Well, Nick Butler is a former senior executive at BP and is now an energy economist.
I think it's very important. I think it's important for BP. They've been there for 20 years, and I was involved when I worked for BP in going into Russia. We thought then that we were helping to bring the country into the wider world, and I think it's important for BP, but I think it's important for Russia as well. It's a sign that Western companies have lost confidence in President Putin, and they don't believe they can work in a country where the rule of law has been just given up. So it's quite serious.
Let's talk practicalities. How is BP going to dispose of their stake? Might they sell it to Rosneft?
They could do a number of things. I think they're now going to try to sell it to someone if they can. It's a very difficult time to do that. It would be, I think it's very risky actually for anybody to invest in Russia. I can imagine that for people watching this in China, for instance, they must now be very worried about the deals that China's done with Russia and how stable all that is going to be under this leadership in Moscow.
You've mentioned the huge symbolism of this. We know, though, it's going to cost BP some $25 billion. I mean, considering they're the biggest foreign investor in Russia for the last 20 years, how's it going to affect Rosneft and other Russian firms? Well,
it'll only cost BP that much if they don't manage to sell it at all. How's it going to affect Rosneft? Well, I think Rosneft can cope with this because BP had less than 25% of their shares. I think it is the bigger problem for Rosneft is the loss of confidence in President Putin by Western governments and other companies. And I think Rosneft is now caught in a system in Moscow that it didn't create, but is part of. And they, I think, are now one of the groups that are going to put pressure on President Putin to rethink his sort of rather wild and dangerous policies, which are doing Russia great damage, as you've reported today, on what's happening in the stock market and the currency and people queuing at the banks. A terrible situation that Russia's brought on itself.
And of course, it's not just BP. Norway's Equinor exiting Russia. Who's next?
Shell, I think, are the next. The Sakhalin project, which is destined or was destined to bring gas to China, much needed. I think Shell will not be able to avoid the reputational damage which would be caused if they tried to stay. And I think they will follow BP within the next few days. I think it's very difficult for any serious Western company now to invest in Russia.